Hey everyone, welcome to another lecture. Is it the 7th? I don't know. Ever wonder why minimum wage could be $7.25 in one region and $15 in another? Have you ever questioned why sex education varies depending on the high school? Or why some states require masks but others do not? The answer? Federalism. Federalism is one of my favorite topics simply because of how messy it makes America. It's why we have such diverse cultures and laws depending on the region, and why we really struggle putting the United in the United States. What is federalism? It is the separation of national, state, and local power and responsibilities. We follow both national, aka federal, and regional, think city, state, etc., government law. Where is this in the Constitution? The 4th article dedicates the states, and the 10th Amendment, allowing whatever is not stated in the Constitution to be left into the state's power. So what are some reasons why we have this in place? Number one, it's intended to be another check on central government power. So even in the case we have one political party controlling Congress, the presidency, and the Supreme Court, your state still has rights, liberties. And although our federal government currently refuses to be part of the Paris Climate Alliance,
I was elected to represent the citizens of Pittsburgh, not Paris.
the mayor of Pittsburgh can say, Pittsburgh stands with the world and will follow the Paris Agreement. And with 40 other mayors and 24 state governors, they can agree to curb the carbon emissions with United States Climate Alliance. The second reason for federalism is that state sovereignty allows liberty for regional issues, such as the legalization of cannabis or even access to an abortion. While the Supreme Court ruled that a state cannot ban abortion within the first trimester, they have left it up to states to decide under what conditions a woman can have an abortion.
A new Alabama law bans all abortions at any stage of pregnancy, unless a mother's physical or mental health is in jeopardy, or if the fetus would not survive.
I apologize to the women of Alabama for this archaic law that we passed that will allow them to be raped, and the fact that they have to carry that child for 9 months.
Georgia, Kentucky, Mississippi, and Ohio have passed heartbeat laws, making abortion illegal once a fetal heartbeat can be detected, which is usually around 6 weeks of pregnancy.
My last reason is regional governments know the issues affecting their area. It's why in San Francisco there is a ban on jewel products, we have a bag tax, there's composting, $15.59 minimum wage, and ads for gay dating apps, to name a few things unique to our area. You will not find those everywhere. While San Franciscans may have grown up with these, plenty of tourists might say, wow, look at all these gay dating ads. And you want me to put my eggshells where? Another example, in Marlborough, Massachusetts, at a Labor Day parade, local vendors were selling silly string to kids, and the kids wreaked havoc on the town, spraying anyone and everything. According to one police officer, every kid had a can of this stuff. It was so toxic that the paint jobs on cars, streets, and stores were ruined, and it was a horrible mess to clean up. The town banned silly string, and to this day, if you're caught with it in Marlborough, you can face a $300 fine. Now after this, it's not like the president said, wait, let's ban silly string everywhere. The town responded to a regional issue affecting the area. Now, a few criticisms regarding federalism. The main being it allows inaction or prevents social change in certain regions. If there's no united change or federal law, there's going to be states and local governments arguing states' rights as an excuse for racism. For example, in Harrison, Arkansas.
As you approach Harrison in Arkansas, there's obvious signs of a very public battle with racism.
It's historically known as a sundown town, meaning people of color should not be out after sundown in fear of harassment or violence.
A former Confederate state, it's grappling with a problematic present.
It's been described as the most racist town in the United States, with billboard ads like this and an influx of white supremacists moving there. But if you ask the town's mayor, they're trying their best to make the town more inclusive with the diversity task force.
When, you hear that the head of the Klan has moved into the area, he uses Harrison as that geographic location to help people find him, then, it paints an image that just isn't true. So we're working together to counter that. We're trying to get the word out that, hey, Okay, so he gets his mail here. That's about it.
However, their reputation was once again questioned when a viral video of a YouTuber holding a Black Lives Matter sign in front of the White Pride radio ads showcased a few other people from town.
Are you a Marxist?
Communist! Domestic terrorist! Trash out of town! That shit don't make shit here.
Hey, all lives matter, not just black. You're Caucasian.
Another criticism is that federalism often allows for unchecked corruption. Most local governments are not going to get the same media treatment as what the president does, so it requires more vigilance on the citizens' part. For example, the chairwoman of the Florida Democratic Party, Terry Rizzo, blasted the federal government's Paycheck Protection Program that was meant to help businesses during COVID. She called it a disaster that funneled money to large corporations. She failed to disclose that her own party, through the PPP, was given $780,000 as a small business loan. For another example, in 2018, Georgia's governor election, Stacey Abrams ran against Brian Kemp.
In the red state of Georgia, where the fish is fried and the tea is sweet, the politics are about as bare knuckle as it comes.
This is a battle for the soul of our state, y'all.
We have an opponent who is an architect of voter suppression.
An historic race in a dead heat.
We are Georgia!
Partly because of Stacey Abrams, a 44-year-old Democratic leader in the Georgia House.
I'm Stacey Abrams, and I'm running for governor.
Who, if elected, would become the first black female governor of any state in U.S. history.
We want all of Georgia to see themselves reflected in my leadership. And yes, I'll be the first black woman to be a governor in the history of the United States. But what that also means is that I'm opening the door for the next person and the person after that.
I'm Brian Kemp. I'm so conservative. I blow up government spending. I own guns that no one's taken away.
Brian Kemp was already Secretary of State, meaning he was in charge of voting registration in Georgia while running for governor. An estimated 53,000 voter registrations were put on hold a month before the election.
6.9 million people registered to vote in Georgia since 2013. 53,000 of those are on a list of voter registration applications now pending. So why would your application end up in that 1% pending? Georgia's exact match law requires information on your voter application to match your driver's license, state ID card, or social security records. If the match isn't exact, you miss a hyphen, or accidentally miss a section, the application is put on hold.
In many cases, Georgia voters did not know the registration was put on hold to begin with. And furthermore, 70% of the people this hold impacted were black. Brian Kemp won the election by less than 55,000 votes and is now the governor of Georgia.
I acknowledge that former Secretary of State Brian Kemp will be certified as the victor in the 2018 gubernatorial election. But to watch an elected official who claims to represent the people in this state baldly pin his hopes for election on the suppression of the people's democratic right to vote has been truly appalling. So let's be clear. This is not a speech of concession. Because concession means to acknowledge an action is right, true, or proper. As a woman of conscience and faith, I cannot concede that. But my assessment is the law currently allows no further viable remedy.
And Stacey Abrams founded Fair Fight Action, an organization focused on ending voter suppression. To cap off both of these criticisms, one of the primary concerns right now is that police power and conduct varies not only by state, but by city. Not every city requires de-escalation tactics or has a ban on chokeholds or even requires a report to be made when a police officer uses force. Furthermore, police in urban areas are significantly wider than the areas they serve, and black unarmed Americans are 3 times more likely to be shot than white unarmed Americans. This calls to question not only corrupt, but also racist practices. But when the media focuses on what Biden or Trump have to say about the police force.
You believe systemic racism is a problem in this country?
Well, you just keep getting back to the opposite subject. We should talk about the kind of violence that we've seen in Portland and here. And
it's a wake-up call to our nation, in my view. It's for all of us, and I mean all of us. It's not the first time we've heard those words. They're the same words we heard from Eric Garner when his life was taken away 6 years ago.
Police force is ultimately in the hands of the region, not the federal government. So when protests are conducted and petitions are signed, the actual concrete changes in practice have to be made by the city or county. Finally, in a federalist system, there are plenty of ways where federal government still reigns supreme. This was solidified in a Supreme Court case called McCulloch v. Maryland. In 1819, Maryland argued that Congress, aka the federal government, had no authority to set up a bank in Baltimore, Maryland. So they wanted to tax the bank for being there. One of the head bankers, James McCulloch, refused to pay the tax, saying, "Nuh-uh, states don't tax the federal government, we tax you." The Supreme Court ruling was in favor of McCulloch, saying, Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, Congress has the right to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers. The necessary and proper clause allows Congress and the president to do largely what they want, and the supremacy clause reinforces that. While often the federal government does not directly force us to do what it wants, it can strong-arm state governments that then force us to do what the federal government wants. There are two ways how. One grants an aid, the other mandates. Grants and aid is federal money given to regional governments. How this works is, say the government wants to implement a federal program to help kids from low-income families get proper after-school daycare and nutrition. Most states just aren't going to willingly say, okay. They want money to do this. For example, Head Start, which is a program that not only supplies nutrition for low-income families, but also resources to get on welfare too. So if one way to get states to follow federal government is to give states money, the other is taking away money. This comes in the form of mandates. Mandates are direct orders to states and local governments to provide certain services under threat of removing funds. An example of this is when the drinking minimum wage was raised to 21. Before 1984, drinking ages varied state by state. You can be 18, you could be 19. In some cases, it's okay to purchase alcohol at 18, but you can only go into bars at 21. The federal government passed the Minimum Drinking Age Act that said if states didn't raise the drinking age to 21, they would remove 10% of their federal highway funding.
Bill we're gathered to sign today reflects the will of the American people. It takes the battle to stop drunk driving one crucial step further. And permit me to tell you why I believe that this bill is so important. We know that drinking plus driving spell death and disaster. We know that people in the 18 to 20 age group are more likely to be in alcohol-related accidents than those in any other age group.
In this case, a federal mandate threatens to remove funds. Another type of mandate is an unfunded mandate, an order given without providing funds for it. For example, the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, the ADA. While it was a victory to be more inclusive for people with disabilities, the federal government did not provide funding for locations to, say, make a building more wheelchair accessible. Instead, the state or local government was held responsible. We call this transfer of power devolution, the transfer of power from central government to regional governments, aka states take on more responsibility, you give the task to someone under you, and that person can give it to someone else, like a game of hot potato. Trump's administration is pro-devolution, largely because one of the main principles of the Republican Party is making federal government less powerful.
Fauci said earlier this week that the lag in testing was in fact a failing. Do you take responsibility for that? And when can you guarantee that every single American who needs a test will be able to have a test? What's the date of that?
Yeah, no, I don't take responsibility at all because we were given a set of circumstances and we were given rules, regulations, and specifications from a different time.
Donald Trump caused the COVID outbreak in New York. Donald Trump caused the COVID outbreak in New York.
For what the government has done, do you take any responsibility for these 50,000 deaths that have happened in this country?
I think we've done a great job. As you know, minimal numbers were going to be 100,000 people. minimal numbers. We're going to be 100,000 people, and we're going to be hopefully far below that.
So you have states that could bicker with the federal government, but federalism is absolutely important right now because it allows states to respond to the coronavirus pandemic however they choose. While some take stricter precautions with longer times to shelter in place, such as California, other states already have theaters and indoor dining open. The more complicated part here is even if one state has mask mandates and shelter in place, its neighboring state could not. And there's no stopping people from traveling to other states for friends, family, or just for fun. So it's still incredibly difficult to stop the spread of a virus in a nation that's so vast and disconnected in laws and culture that there's no clear consensus of how to handle it, unless the federal government steps in and makes a federal mandate. So I want to leave you with this piece. While federalism can excuse stagnation, corruption, and confusion in times of emergency, it also allows an incubator for progress. In the past, states have been the ones to decide gay marriage. They're the ones who have experimented with raising the minimum wage and allow for expansions of healthcare and voting rights, to name a few. In Stockton, California right now, listed in the past as one of the worst cities to live in the United States, they're trying out universal basic income.
In 2012, Stockton filed for bankruptcy and was one of Forbes' most miserable cities in America. Stockton is now ranked the second most fiscally healthy city in the state, but nearly 1 in 4 people live below the poverty line.
In 2016, Michael Tubbs was elected mayor at the age of 26. He is the youngest mayor of a city with more than 100,000 people and is Stockton's first African-American mayor. Mayor Tubbs is addressing his town's poverty with an innovative and controversial program to give some Stockton residents $500 a month to fight economic hardship. He's with us now. Mayor Tubbs, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me.
I know your city has struggled for years with income inequality and poverty. Why universal basic income?
Well, it's interesting because the idea is almost as old as the Republic. So Thomas Paine was calling for this in the Agrarian Revolution, Dr. King before he passed, even Richard Nixon. The idea is that, especially in California, 1 in 2 Californians can't afford one $400 emergency. People are working harder and harder, only to fall further and further behind. So a group called the Economic Security Project was looking for a city to pilot with philanthropic funding, no taxpayer dollars. And given the challenges of Stockton, but also given the resilience and the brilliance of our residents, I thought it would be a good fit for us.
The progressive and experimental practices of certain cities and states today are the norm of tomorrow. Federalism guarantees diverse laws that create diverse states that then allow diverse towns. So if you ever feel you do not belong where you're at, look further, because thanks to federalism, there could be another home out there for you. Thank you for watching. Godspeed.